So Bill C-11 passed in Canada, setting us down the road to be more like China. Before you know it, we'll have our own Great Firewall of Canada. For those who don't know, Bill C-11, also known as the Digital Charter Implementation Act, which is proposed legislation to aim and strengthen the government's privacy and copyright laws over you, which will include government control over your personal information by introducing rights and requirements for businesses that collect, use, and disclose personal information, modernizing Canada's copyright laws by introducing new measures to address online privacy and infringement, such as requiring ISPs to forward notices of alleged copyright infringement to their subscribers, supporting innovation and competition in a digital economy by introducing measures that will allow the government to pick and choose what you watch and what you pick from, and lastly, enhancing the enforcement of Canada's privacy and copyright laws by giving the Privacy Commissioner and the Copyright Board new powers to investigate and penalize non-compliant businesses. So to sum all that up, it just means I'm from the government, here to tell you what to watch and how to watch it. And if you don't like it, no more internet for you. And this bill only really serves to harm Canada's tech industry, as it will require companies to obtain explicit consent from users before collecting and using or disclosing their personal information, which will only create significant barriers for these companies. Because if users are hesitant to provide consent, companies may struggle to collect the data they need to develop the new products and services, which will put Canadian companies at a competitive disadvantage compared to their other counterparts in other countries. This will also start to erode free speech in Canada, as this would allow the government to order companies to remove content that they deem harmful or hateful, which will be used to censor legitimate speech that could be critical of the government or other powerful institutions, which ultimately undermines Canada's free speech and the country's democratic value. And lastly, C-11 gives us no way to protect our privacy rights. Without any provisions, Canadians will have no way of fighting back, and by the law being vague in some areas, which will make it difficult to enforce and could lead to inconsistent interpretations, leading the government to pick who can say what, where, and when, without any recourse for you. There will also be several impacts for Canadian creators. For example, this will include new remuneration rates, which will give creators the right to be paid for their use of their content online, and is aimed to address the long-standing issue of creators not receiving fair compensation for their work. Some experts argue that this provision may not go far enough to actually protect creators. Additionally, C-11 has provisions to make it easier for creators to enforce their copyrights, which would allow the copyright holders to request the removal of infringement content from online platforms without having to go through the courts. And while this seems good on the surface, this will probably lead to overzealous enforcement and removal of content that is not actually infringement. And on the consumer side of things, C-11 does actually have provisions that would give consumers more control over their personal information. However, the bill also has provisions that could lead to increased surveillance of consumers online. For example, the bill would allow the government to require online platforms to collect and retain more data about their users, which could be used for law enforcement purposes, which will erode customers' privacy and lead to chilling effects on free speech. Furthermore, the bill's provisions on digital law could limit consumers' ability to access and use copyright material. For example, the bill would make it illegal to circumvent digital lock on copyright material. Even if the use is legal under the provision of the law, this could limit consumers' ability to use and modify content such as copyright material for educational purposes or creating parodies. So at this point, you may be asking yourself, what can I do? Well, the first and foremost thing you can do is educate yourself on how C-11 will impact you. Thus, this can help you have an informed opinion and identify specific aspects on how the bill may affect you. The next best thing is to contact your MP. You can write to them and arrange a meeting to express your concerns and provide feedback on C-11. The next best thing is to join one of the many groups and organizations out there working to promote and protect Canadian privacy rights. Some examples of these groups are Open Media, the Canadian Civil Liberations Association, and the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And lastly, the most important tool is social media. Social media will be our most powerful tool in spreading awareness and mobilizing support for this issue. And by using social media to share information about C-11 and to encourage others to get involved would be our best way to fight this. And tagging your MP and other relevant policymakers would be a great way to get their attention. So in conclusion, we have no idea how C-11 will impact Canada, but I'd rather not wait and find out. And if you don't want the government to be censoring you online, please do one of the following examples that I gave, because it only takes one person to turn a free country into a slave country. Even if it's not the current parliament, this sets a precedent that anyone down the line can use against us. And this will be a lot easier to take care of now before the government has a chance to use this against you. Thanks for listening.